How's it hanging, homies? It's me, your boy Master Steph. I know I'm very close to the camera than I normally am. This is weird for me too. I actually moved my camera around to record this video. But yeah, so today for you guys, I have this Nova deck profile. So Nova, I think I think Nova is one of the coolest cards in the game right now. Specifically, I'm talking about, if you don't know, Supernova Dragon, Siegwurm Nova. It's a lot in one card for that name. But I think Nova's such a cool card. He looks super cool. I think Star Dragons in general are such a cool concept. And I really have a lot of fun playing the Star Dragon archetype. So today for you in this video, I'm going to be showing off the Nova Star Dragon archetype that I've been playing since the game has come out. It's one of my favorite decks. I think it's a lot of fun. Looking at like current tournament results, it's not like super prevalent in tournaments as of right now, outside of like the Las Vegas Open that happened. There was like a one Nova there, I think. But right now, Red Pterosaur seems to be the red deck to play. So if you want to be super competitive, Red Pterosaur is looking like the wave, but I think Nova has a lot of potential, especially with future support in the future, to be very, very good, right? So I'm gonna show you my current list. It's not optimal by any means, but I think it's a lot of fun. And if you just want to flex on your friends and hit them with one of the coolest possible combos in BSS01, in my opinion, then this is gonna be the deck tech for you. So let's go ahead. I'll start wasting your time. We're gonna jump right into this deck tech. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get into this Nova deck profile. So we're gonna start off with the very first card of the deck, and that is going to be Nova himself. So obviously I run 4 copies, a full play set of Nova. I think that's kind of necessary for this deck. And to kind of go over what Nova does really quickly, is I have my Saga rare. I am flexing a little bit right here. But to kind of go over what Nova does really quickly, so Nova is an 8 cost that can be reduced by 3, so he can cost up to 5 cores. And his first ability right here is Ascend. So Ascend basically means that whenever you play this card as an additional cost, you have to pay anything that costs 6 or more. Send it to trash, place all of its cores in your reserve to summon Nova. So this means that if you do not have at least a 6 cost or more on the field, whenever you try to summon Nova, you will not be able to play him at all. You have to use that Ascend effect to summon him whatsoever, no matter how much he costs. Move my camera a little bit. No matter how much he costs, you have to pay that Ascend effect in order to summon him. So, but once he is summoned, he has a bunch of cool things. So we'll start with his Wind Summoned ability right here. So his Wind Summoned ability, I'll put this Saga rare at the bottom. This Wind Summoned ability is if you ascended by using a card with Siegwurm in the name, so he counts himself. So if you ascended by sacrificing a card with Siegwurm in the name, you can pay your soul core. And if you do so, you can take 5 cores from the void and then add those cores to your life. So that means that you can go back up to 5 life if you're at 1 or 2 HP as a way to heal. On top of that, Nova has the Flash keyword. I'm sorry, not the Flash. Nova has the Awaken keyword. The Awaken keyword basically says when this unit attacks, or I guess not when it attacks, but during combat step, you can flash to awaken, and you can remove any number of cores from some of your other red spirits onto this spirit, right? So if Nova only has 3 cores on him, and then you attack with him, and you have another spirit with like 2 cores on them, you can kill that spirit, take both of those cores, and dump them onto Nova to bump him up to a 12k on his attack. And then, last but not least, his when this spirit attacks ability is, whenever he attacks, you can select any number of your opponent's spirits with a combined BP of 10,000 points, and then destroy all of them, right? So if your opponent has a 1,000 BP, a 3,000 BP, and a 6,000 BP, that equals 10,000. You can destroy all 3 of those cards whenever he attacks. Very, very strong ability. Nova's super cool because he can go from, 1 HP about to die to big guy on board, back at full HP, and then also swinging and blowing up their board in one fell swoop, right? So that is Nova. He is the star of the deck. So, that is Nova. He is the star of the deck. So, of course, we run a full play set of him. And there's 1 Saga rare. I honestly wish I had another Nova so I could keep the Saga rare in the binder, but it's fine. It's so cool. Anyway, so we're gonna take very special care of that, put that to the side. Next, the next card we run here are gonna be 3 copies of the Imperial Thunder Dragon Siegwurm, right? So This card's main purpose in the deck is to have an additional target for Nova's ascension effect, right? Because his effect says you have to ascend a spirit with Siegwurm in the name, so either himself or discard. These are currently the only 2 cards in Battle Spirits, at least in set 1, that have Siegwurm in their name, right? And this card comes out of the starter deck, so you have to get the starter deck to get this one right here, right? So basically his main purpose in the deck is to be a Siegwurm, so you can play him out and then sacrifice him with Nova to get the heal effect. On top of that, he does have pretty decent stats, right? He has Confront at level 1. Confront forces your opponent to block this spirit whenever the spirit attacks. And then on top of that, if he's level 3, whenever he, during your attack step, he gives all of your awakened spirits Confront. So if for whatever reason you have a Nova and him on the board, Nova has awakened, so Nova also gains Confront. So basically that's another cool combo where you can attack, blow up a bunch of their things, and whatever did not die is now forced to block Nova. So that is another cool effect. I don't normally get both of them on the board at the same time, especially not this guy with 5 cores on him, if I'm being honest. But it can happen from time to time, and it's a pretty cool combo. I'm only running 3 of him. At first, I was running 4 of him because I really wanted to find him. Because I'm doing a more Star Dragon focused deck, I'm only running 3 of him. And the reason for that being is I run a playset of this guy right here, which is also from the starter deck. I'm running a playset of Galaxy Dragon Andromedios. So this card I think is super slept on. I don't know if a lot of other Nova decks have been playing it from the ones I saw, at least early on. Not a lot of people were playing this guy in the deck, and I think it was kind of a shoe-in personally. This card also comes out of the starter deck, and so first and foremost, his just plain text effect is when you summon a Star Dragon Spirit card, count each symbol on this spirit as 2 symbols when calculating cost reduction. So for those who do not know, every single spirit in the game has a cost as well as a reduction. So for example, this card costs 4, but it can be reduced by 2, meaning it can cost 2. The symbol that calculates reduction is right here on every single card. So normally this will only count for 1 reduction, but if he is on the board, all of your Star Dragons count him as 2 reduction, making a lot of your Star Dragons cheaper, right? So if you have 1 of him on the board, you can play another 1 of him for 2, right? If I have 1 of him on the board, I can play this for 4 instead of for 6, right? So just off of that alone is super great to me, because a lot of the Star Dragons tend to have higher costs, especially the better ones, and this makes them a bit cheaper. On top of that, for just 2 cores at level 2, he gains the ability that when the spirit attacks, you can top check the top 3 cards of your deck, and you can add 1 Star Dragon among them to your hand, and then bottom deck the rest of the cards. This is a great way to tutor out more of your Star Dragons, right? It's a way to find copies of this guy. It's a way to find your Novas, right? Because they're all Star Dragons, right? I run a very Star Dragon heavy focused deck. I don't really run many cards that aren't Star Dragons, as you're gonna see. And so this is increasing my chances of getting more and more Star Dragons every single time I attack. Granted, you run the risk of potentially burning some cards you may have wanted, but 9 times out of 10, I'm going to use this effect to thin through my deck and look for more Star Dragons. I cannot tell you how many times this has gotten me out of a bind because I top checked a Nova and was able to combo the turn after, right? Next, this is kind of a staple I see in a lot of red decks, so I really shouldn't pay any mind. And another starter deck card. So the red starter deck has a lot of good cards in it, but we have Nebula Dragon Andromeda. So Andromeda, I run another playset of this card, so it's another 4 of. Andromeda is just a very solid effect. Whenever you summon Andromeda, on when summon effect, you can either destroy 1 spirit that has 3000 BP or less, or you can destroy a Nexus. So this is one of the few cards in the game currently that has Nexus removal outside of Burning Force. On top of that is also a body, right? And it's a Star Dragon, so it synergizes well with what you're trying to do. Besides that, you really mainly use this for the play effect and to put a body on the board, right? But it does have decent stats, and at level 3 it gains Confront, which can be useful in certain scenarios, right? But I play a playset of this because it's just a great removal. It puts a body on the board, which adds to your overall reduction, and it's a Star Dragon, so it's searchable, not searchable per se, but you know, you can find it with Andromedios' effect, right? So very good card. I run a full playset of that card. Next, we have 2 of Divine Halberd Dragon Arc. So this card I think is also pretty sick. So one thing about the Nova archetype in general is I feel like it can be kind of slow sometimes. It's not really as fast as like Pterosaur aggro, and you can get aggroed down if you're not really careful. So I think running this guy kind of helps with that, because his effect is neither player's life can be reduced by an attack from a spirit that has 2,000 or fewer BP, right? It's not super useful against every single one drop, especially if they put some cores on them, but when they're trying to go super wide with a bunch of small guys, he can basically negate all of that momentum that they have, right? Because it counts for both you and your opponent. But the cool thing is a lot of your small star dragons are always going to be above 2,000 attack, maybe except for rain needles if you have them. So his effect really doesn't normally negative impact you. Then on top of that, if you level him up to level 2, whenever he swings on attack, he gets to kill a 2,000 BP or lower spirit. So he's a bit of removal, a bit of, you know, defense to kind of help you get into those late game combo turns. Because with Nova, I really feel you need to kind of get into those combo turns, which we'll talk more about when I get to all the combo pieces. Try not to go super slow with this. So next up, we have 4 copies of Rain Needle. Rain Needle is another starter deck card. It's just a vanilla star dragon, right? So 1 drop that can be reduced by 1, so you can play it for free if you have any other red spirits on the board. And it's just a decent stat stick. You can play it to kind of halt aggro. You can play it really cheaply just to have extra cards on the board for reduction. And then you can also find them with Andromedios' effect, which gives you more pulls. Granted, you probably want almost anything but Rain Needle in most cases from Andromedios' effect, but I think just having it is a good option. I have it at 4 right now just because I think it's good to stop aggro or to kind of aggress early if you have the hand for it, but I can see you cutting it down to less than 4. It might not be necessary per se. All right, so next we're going to get to some of my kind of like weird tech options that I think are pretty decent. The first weird tech option I have is a 2 of Nebula Dragon, right? So Nebula Dragon, the Star Dragon, of course, it goes with that theme. And you might have noticed a running theme too, that a lot of our Star Dragons are 6 costs or higher. That's another reason why I have Andromedios, because it gets extra reduction, so you can play them for a bit cheaper. And I think it just helps out a lot, right? But anyway, Nebula Dragon, I think is a great tech card. It's a bit of a more aggro card, and it has the effect that when it's level 2 at 7,000 BP, if the soul core is on this card when it attacks, it has 2 red symbols. So your symbol on top of counting for reduction also lets you denotes how much attack damage you deal, right? So most cards have 1 symbol, so they do 1 damage. So this says that he gets an additional symbol when it attacks, so he actually deals 2 damage. And then also on top of that, any of your red spells will also get additional reduction during his attack because he gets 2 symbols, right? So it makes your red magic a bit cheaper, and it also threatens additional damage. The reason why I have this card in here is that if you are playing a more aggressive matchup and you draw into him early, he could be great to apply a lot of pressure to your opponent. And then also, it's kind of good against ice shields in a way, because even if they have ice shield and burst and they activate it on his attack, they're still going to be -1 HP because he's dealing 2. So instead of going back to net 0, they go -1 on HP, which I think is pretty neat. The only reason why I have him as a 2 of and not a full playset is that he does require the soul core for that ability. But if you get to a point in the game where you use Nova's Ascension effect on a Siegwurm to lose your soul core, then you no longer get that benefit, right? So if you draw him late into the game and you've already used Nova's effect, a lot less useful, which is why I currently only have him as a 2 of and not more. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier too. I apologize if I didn't. I'm pretty sure I did when I said Nova's effect, but just in case I missed it, whenever you ascend using a Siegwurm card, you also have to pay your soul core to the void, right? Once you place your soul core into the void, you cannot get it back. It's basically gone for the rest of the game. So that's how you get the heal 5 effect. So it's not every single time you summon Nova you get the heal 5. If you blow up a Siegwurm, it's play Nova, kill or sacrifice one of your own Siegwurms, and also remove your soul core from the game essentially, right? And there are currently no effects to bring it back from the void. So like I said, once it's gone, it's gone. So that's why Nebula Dragon isn't as good, because once the soul core is gone, he doesn't get that. He's basically a textless Star Dragon at that point. So kind of a weird tech option. You might not need him in your deck, but I think he's cool in certain situations. Next card I have right here is Divine Mars Dragon Ares Dragoon. This is another Star Dragon. As you can see, he has more reduction than most Star Dragons, so he actually can be played for 2 instead of 3, which is nice. Another reason why I have him in here. Then he has the Awaken effect, just like Nova does. Once again, Awaken allows you to pull cores from a different spirit onto them during your flash step, during an attack. But the main reason why I have this card in here is for a cheeky little combo that you can do with Nova. It is kind of specific and a little bit expensive, which is why I only have 2 of him in the deck. But the way the combo works is if you can put 6 cores on him and make it level 3, he gains the effect that while the spirit attacks, when the battle ends, once per turn, you may refresh all of your spirits with Awaken, right? So Nova, as you know, has Awaken. So whenever a spirit attacks, they are exhausted, and if they are refreshed, they can either attack again or block on your opponent's turn. So the cool little combo I have with this setup, it should be obvious, but in case you don't really quite get it, I'll give you a quick example. So let's say you have Nova on board and him on board, right? So you have 2 cores there, and then you have these 5 cores on Nova, right? So let's say you attack with Nova first. Nova's effect activates. He's level 5, or he's level 3. He has 12,000 attack, and then his attack effect activates where you can blow up 10,000 BP worth of units on your opponent's board, right? So let's say that attack goes through, Nova survives the combat. You then attack with this guy, and then during your flash step, you can flash Awaken, move these cores over to Nova. Off of Nova over to him. And now he's level 3 and his ability will activate. So unless they kill him during this combat, once the combat ends, what happens is they both have Awaken, so they both refresh. And then after they both refresh, you can then attack with Nova again, and then Awaken, flash these cores back over to Nova, and he's back at 12,000 BP. Granted, you will not get the when attacks effect a secondary time with Nova, unless you have at least 3 cores on him when you declare the attack, but it's still very strong. I've closed out a couple of games with this combo. It is very cool when you get to pull it off, but I will say it is a bit expensive and a bit specific, so you may not always get to do it. That's why I only have him as a 2 of, but I think it is a cool combo and might not be optimal, honestly. I might, in future builds, I might play around with taking him and Nebula Dragon out just for some more utility cards, but as of right now, I think they are both very cool and I like having them in there. All right, the last spirit I have here is Dark Bishop Baculus. So Dark Bishop Baculus, not a red card, also not a Star Dragon, but I think he's just too good with Nova to not play. In fact, I'm only running 2 currently. I might bump him up to 4. I think he is just that good and that necessary in some situations. So Baculus has a when summoned effect that removes all but 1 core from all spirits on the field and place them into their owner's reserves, right? So that's your spirits and your opponent's spirits. Everything goes down to just 1 singular core. The reason why that is so good with Nova is because a lot of spirits BP is tied to their level, right? So if they're only level 1, they have the lowest possible BP, meaning that when Nova attacks, he can effectively kill more spirits on the board, which is already great. This is already great synergy, right? On top of that, this card is very useful in certain matchups. Like I have a friend that plays a lot of white control, and there'll be some board states where he'll get down Dragon Ship, like the white 8 cost Dragon Ship that gives armor red to everything on the board if it's at level 3. And being able to play Baculus, even though he also has armor purple, Baculus effect, because it does not target, gets around Dragon Ship's effect. So you can then remove the cores from Dragon Ship to take away the armor red from everything. So then when Nova attacks, you can effectively clear the board on that specific board state, right? So I think it's very good in those situations. I only have it at 2 currently because I feel like it can be a bit expensive sometimes, but there's been so many games where I wish I drew into a Baculus, or so many games that I would have won if I just had 1 Baculus, that I'm considering bumping him up to 4. But right now he's just at 2 in my list. So that's going to be it for all of my spirits. We are now going to move on to our magic. So I'm not going to hold you. I'm going to get through the first magic. Absolute Ice Shield, 4 of, right? That's got to be a gimme. You've probably seen this in like almost every deck list that they are almost all running 4 Absolute Ice Shields. Only reason why most people aren't running Ice Shields is they don't have them. Ice Shield can be difficult to get a hold of. Luckily, I was able to get a hold of not only 3, but also this SPR. And I think this SPR has beautiful art. It's so cool. But yeah, Ice Shield I feel like it doesn't need an explanation at this point, but I will explain it, but I feel like it does not need one. But Ice Shield is just a great burst card. Whenever you lose life, if this is in your burst area, You can activate it for free to place a core from your reserve back into your life, effectively healing you that one life you lost. And then you can also activate this flash effect to end the battle. I'm sorry, not to end the battle, that after this battle ends, the attack step ends. The attack step is the last step of your opponent's turn before their end step. There's no main step 2. So once you end their attack step, you effectively end their turn. Obviously, after battle effects or during end step effects will still activate, but you effectively halt all of their aggression. So if your opponent has a full board and they were trying to swing in for game, an Ice Shield can end that turn, completely stop them in their tracks, which is super good for Nova because there's so many times where you want to manage your life. You kind of want to get low life sometimes with Nova, and you want to hover around a certain range of low life, and this helps you kind of like play that game. Also, keep in mind, you don't have to put Ice Shield in burst area. You can play it out of your hand as a flash. So don't always feel like you have to burst it down, because if you were at 1 HP and you take that damage, you can't activate Ice Shield to save you. Once you hit 0, you lose the game. Even if you have Ice Shield to heal that life back, you lose the game on 0. Which is another reason why Nebula Dragon is a cool tech, because if your opponent's at 2 HP and you have Nebula Dragon with the Soul Core, they cannot take the attack from Nebula Dragon because the 2 damage would kill them even if they have Ice Shield laid down. So that's another reason why I have Nebula Dragon in the deck. But yeah, that's Ice Shield. I kind of spent too long on that one, I feel. This is the real star magic of the deck though. Right here, this is what makes the deck work. If this card did not exist, I don't know if this deck would work or be as cool as it is. But here we have Big Bang Energy. Big Bang Energy is the magic that makes Nova and Star Dragons work in general, and it is very, very cool. So the flash effect is just giving something 2000 BP, not really important. The main effect is where it's at. So the main effect is during this turn, all of your Star Dragon cards in your hand, all your Star Dragon Spirit cards in your hand have a cost equal to your life total. This is where all of these super spicy plays come out. This is where you get the really super dope combos in the Nova deck. This is what makes me love the deck so much, because it makes it so much fun. So basically, you want to kind of get to low HP to a certain degree with Nova, or with Star Dragons in general, because you want to have a Big Bang Energy in your hand. If you go down to like 2 HP or even 1 HP and you play Big Bang Energy, all of your Star Dragons will cost 2 or 1 HP. But the cool thing about that is that they keep their reduction. So what that means is if a card, if your life is at 2 and a card in your hand goes down to 2 costs, they still keep the reduction. So for Nova, for example, he will go to his cost will turn into 2, but he still has 3 reduction. Meaning if you have 2 red spirits or nexuses on the board, you can play Nova for 0. Obviously you still have to pay the ascend cost, but you can play him for 0 and then put cores onto him. That's how that interaction works. So what that means is you go down to like 1 HP or 2 HP and you have these crazy combo turns where you play Big Bang Energy, you flood the board with a bunch of Star Dragons, you drop Nova down, you ascend a Siegwurm, hopefully, heal back up to 5. So you've dropped a bunch of really big dragons onto the board, and then you've healed back up to 5, effectively giving you a second lease of life in the game, and also technically give you a bit more cores to work with, because those cores can now be converted into more mana for later in the game. So Big Bang Energy, crucial card, super tight. You might be wondering why I'm running only 3 and not 4 if it's so important to the deck, because it kind of has diminishing returns. You're really only going to use the big Nova combo probably once per game, maybe twice, to kind of like flood the board out. And then after that, you don't really need more. So you generally want to see at least one of these in your game. You don't normally need 2 though. So I'm running 3 to ensure I can at least find one of them, but I don't think it's necessary to run 4 because I don't want to ever see more than 2 generally in a game. Although the flash effect of giving 2000 BP is decent, it's not really super detrimental to the game plan of this deck. So now these are just some support magics that we have to kind of accelerate our game plan. As you can kind of tell, our game plan kind of revolves around stalling the game out until we get Big Bang Energy and Nova in hand, and everything else is just to help us either see these cards faster or to survive, right? So in that see the cards faster category, I am running a full playset of Starblessed Draw. Starblessed Draw is a red magic that says for 4 cores, draw 2 cards, right? It's just pot of greed. You just draw 2 cards. A cool thing about this one though is that it does have a burst effect, that if it's in your burst area and your opponent has a wind summoned effect that activates, once that effect resolves, you can burst this out for free to draw 2 cards for free. And then if you have decors, you can pay for the main effect to draw 2 additional cards, meaning this can be a total of 4 card draw on 1 card. Granted, I have to be honest, as of right now, from my experience, at least in the limited games I've played, outside of purple, there's not a lot of wind summoned effects running around. So this card can be kind of a bait sometimes if you put it in the burst area, because you'll be waiting for a long time for your opponent to play a wind summoned. And unless they're playing purple, you're probably not going to see it for a while, right? Like in my deck, for example, my only wind summons are Nova and Andromeda, right? So unless you catch me doing one of those, you're probably not going to get value out of Star Blast draw. So don't be afraid to play this from hand is basically what I'm getting at, right? You're playing red already, so you can play it for 2. 2 cores for 2 cards is a really good trade-off, and even the 4 for 2 isn't bad in this game, because 4 for 2 seems to be the standard. And how do I know that seems to be the standard? Because I'm also running 4 copies of Charge Draw, which has the same text, 4 cores reduced by 2, main step, draw 2 cards. This one has the added effect if it doesn't have a burst, but it does have a flash, where you can give one of your spirits 2000 BP during the turn. Comes in handy sometimes, but once again, I'm using this for the draw. This deck kind of revolves around drawing your combo pieces, and if you don't draw them, you kind of just have a bad time sometimes. So I want to maximize how many cards I can see. That's why I'm running 8 draw 2 cards in the deck, right? 4 Star Blast, 4 Charge. So now here comes probably the most controversial part about my personal deck list. I am only running 1 Burning Force. Burning Force is a great red card. It's a staple across red for sure, and a staple in a lot of non-red decks as well. The reason why is that outside of Andromeda, this is one of the only cards in the game that has Nexus removal, right? This allows you to destroy your opponent's Nexus. On top of that, it's pretty good anti-aggro because as a flash effect or a main effect, you can select 2 of your opponent's spirits for 3000 BP or less and then destroy them. So it gives you the option of playing either removal on spirits to slow the game down, or also removal on Nexuses. So the reason why I'm only running 1, I was running this at 3 before. I was playing around with the idea of running only 1 for multiple reasons. Reason number 1 is I have 4 Andromedas. Andromeda's already Nexus removal and gives me a body. And in most cases, Andromeda's going to cost the same of this, if not, at worst case scenario, it costs 1 more than this, but it also gives me a body. So that body on the board kind of trades off with not destroying an extra spirit. And then on top of that, I am also running as a different option 3 Angelic Pressures currently, right? So the reason why I'm running 3 Angelic Pressures is that similar to Burning Force, it can kill a spirit with 3000 BP or less, because Angelic Pressure reduces one of your opponent's spirits BP for the entire turn by 3000. So if they only have 3000 BP, that will destroy them. Granted, it is 1 less destruction effect than Burning Force, but the trade-off is this can also make different trades more advantageous for you, and it also skirts around things like armor red and things of that nature, right? So my logic was, even at max reduction, Burning Force costs 3, Angelic Pressure is always going to cost 3, so at reduction, they're the same. You lose a little bit of value because you don't get to kill 2 spirits, but you get more value in the fact that you can win certain combat trades you would normally lose. It could be a surprise factor if opponents aren't expecting you to have random yellow in your deck, and then they can skirt around some things like armor red in order to kill certain white spirits in the white control matchup. So that's why I am playing around with 1 Burning Force, 3 Angelics, and then 4 Andromedas. And I feel like between all of that, it gives me the removal I need to kind of hang in. But that's been experimental. And that's all my magics. The last 2 cards we'll talk about are my Nexuses. So I am only running 4 Nexuses currently. And this also might be a bit controversial, but right now I'm only running 2 Volcanic Canyons. When I first started playing, I had Volcanic Canyon at 4, and I cut it down to 2. Reason being is, yes, I really want to be very aggressive with my draws. Well, first I'll explain what it does. So during your draw step, you can draw an additional card, and then you could have to discard a card from your hand after drawing that additional card. And then if it's leveled up, it gives all of your spirits 1000 BP during your attack step. So the reason why I am running this only at 2, I was running 4, and I was running 4 mostly to make sure I saw it so I could have it, especially on turn 1. But I found that I find myself not really needing as many later in the game. And I don't want to play too many of them and accidentally mill myself out either. Obviously, you can just play 1 or 2 and hold the rest in hand. But I'm playing it at 2 because I just felt that it wasn't 100% necessary to run at a max playset. I have a bunch of draw in the deck already. This just kind of gives me a little bit of added utility. And instead of running it at 4, I have a tech of 2 Netherworld Depths instead. I think Netherworld Depths is an absolutely great Nexus. It can be kind of slow sometimes, but my deck is already, you know, a bit slow, but I have the benefit of being able to heal. The reason why I think Netherworld Depths is so good is that it does so many things, right? So Netherworld Depths is a purple Nexus that draws a card every single time one of your opponent's spirits is exhausted. That's whether they attacked, that's whether they blocked, that's whether they were exhausted by a card effect. So the reason why I think this is so good is that it does 2 things. 1, it deters your opponent from attacking you if they don't have a good setup, because they don't want to swing, you block it but then get to draw, or swing, you deal with their attack, you get to draw for that, right? It gives you so much momentum if you just get to keep drawing cards every single time they try to attack you. And sometimes it can even make them not want to block you because they don't want to give you that card draw for blocking, especially if they don't have any card draw themselves. The second thing this does is that it just gives you a bunch of cards, or second thing this does on my deck specifically, is it makes my Baculus just a bit cheaper, right? When I have this on the board, playing a Baculus, it doesn't feel as bad if I'm playing it for 5 or 4, if I have both of these down by some miracle. And then also the secondary effect gives you kind of like a great value curse effect. It says that during your attack step, when one of your spirits is blocked, you may pay 1 core from this Nexus to destroy your opponent's blocking spirit when the battle ends. So what that can do for you is if you have smaller guys on the board like Rain Needle, or even to a degree Halberd, Dragon Arc, or even Andromeda, which is 1 core, this can kind of work as a little curse effect, or if you're attacking something bigger than you, you can use this to pay a core off of it to kill a bigger creature, which once again deters your opponent from wanting to block your creatures even more, right? Especially if you have cores on this guy. So instead of running 4 Volcanic Canyons, I was running 2 and 2, and between these and all my draw cards, I feel like this gives me enough draw throughout my deck to really draw into what I need to do. I was running 0 depths at first and 4 canyons, but I've really been liking the ratio of 2 and 2 in my playtesting at least. All right, and that is the deck list. So obviously I don't think that list is super optimal by any means. There's a lot that can be changed with it, but I do think it's fun. I think it's very fun, and I think it lets you have a lot of fun with the Nova combo. I think Star Dragons as a concept are super cool, and I'm really looking forward to more Star Dragon support in future sets. So one thing I'm going to do before we wrap up this video is I'm going to do a couple of opening hands to kind of show you what I think you should be keeping in your mulligans, or at least what I normally would or would not keep in my mulligans, and maybe show you like 1 turn on defense or 1 turn on offense. So let's go ahead and jump into that, and yeah, we'll see what happens next. So let's go ahead and get this started. So the first time, I'm going to assume my opponent made me go first. So whenever you go first, you do not get a core step. So that means that on my first turn, I would only have 4 cores available, including my soul core, right? And I do not get an additional core if I go first. So the way the mulligan rule works in this game as well is you get to draw 4 cards. If you decide to keep all 4 of your cards, you get an additional card, making your starting hand 5. If you decide to mulligan, however, you take the 4 cards, put them to the bottom of your deck, draw 4 more cards, and then shuffle your deck. And you do not get an additional draw, meaning your starting hand is just 4. So once again, I'm going to pretend as if I'm going first. So I'll put my 1 here to remember that I am going first. And let's go ahead and put it over here in this little corner. And let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to draw my 4 cards. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So honestly, if I were going first, I would probably keep this hand. The reason why I would keep this hand is, 1, we have an absolute ice shield already for defense, especially depending on the matchup that could matter. But if you don't know what the matchup is, having 1 ice shield for defense is pretty good. The biggest thing here is that we have Big Bang Energy in hand, and we want to make sure we have at least 1 Big Bang Energy in hand for later in the game, right? In most hands, if I open with either Big Bang Energy or Volcanic Canyon, I will probably keep that hand just because I want to make sure I see one of these. Granted, sometimes if you only have 1 Big Bang Energy and a bunch of other bad cards in hand, I probably would not keep those. But in this case, I have Big Bang Energy. I have Andromeda, which is a solid play. Granted, you won't be able to play Andromeda until about turn 2. If your opponent attacks you on their turn, you wouldn't be able to play a drama until turn 2. But you also have charge draw. So on turn 1, you don't really have any other plays to make, and you're not going to be able to attack anyway. So I could play charge draw 2 cards, and have more options. So I would keep this hand. Because I get to draw an additional card. I get another charge draw, and then I start my turn. So on my turn start, I don't get a core because I don't get a core step on turn 1. I draw for my turn. I get a Siegwurm, another combo piece we want to draw. So your 3 main combo pieces you want in your hand at any given time is you want a Big Bang Energy, 1 Siegwurm, and 1 Nova. So I have 2/3 of my combo in hand, so I'm sitting pretty. So what I will probably do with this turn is I would just spend these 4 cores to play my charge draw 2 additional cards, and then pass turn. So this is also great because now I have Andromedios, which not only makes my Star Dragons cheaper, but it lets me search my deck for more Star Dragons, right? So let's assume that my opponent attacks me on my turn. So I lose a life, I go down to 4 life, and I have, 5 cores now. So on my turn, I core step, I would go to 6 cores, I draw a card, it's a Nova. I have my full combo in hand now, which is great, but let's go ahead and pretend to play this out, right? So because I have exactly 6 cores, I would reveal my Andromedios, I would spend the 4 to play him, and then put 2 cores on him, so now he is level 2. So that means when I will probably play this burst down or something at this point now, especially depending on the matchup. But now I can attack with my Andromedios. Whenever he attacks, I top check top 3. 1, 2, 3. On that top check, I get another Andromedios and a Andromeda. So you can pick whichever card you need depending on the matchup, right? And that's kind of how the flow of that first game will go. At this point, I don't really care too much about taking a bunch of damage because if I go low, as long as I don't go low super early, it's probably fine. But even if I do go low, I have the option to Big Bang Energy, Siegwurm, Nova to heal back up to 5. So because I have these 3 cards in hand already, I'm sitting pretty, I feel like I'm sitting kind of pretty for this game, right? I feel like I don't really need to worry about too much in this game because I know I have my Nova heal as a backup plan. And then I have additional draw in hand with 2 charge draws, or they can also double as BP boosts. So that was an example of how I would play my turn. I think that was a pretty great example, actually. I don't think I could have really showed it better than that. So let's go ahead and shuffle one more time, and I'll show you one more player 1 mulligan, and then after that, I'll show you a player 2 mulligan, and we'll go from there. There's a very few differences in the player 2 mulligan. Really, like I said, you're mostly looking for a draw, Big Bang Energy. Well, the priority is Big Bang Energy, Nova, a Siegwurm, and then any kind of draw. It probably would be your priority in that order, right? So let's say that we shuffle, my opponent cuts. Okay. Let's say I'm going first again, right? So I have my cores. I have my 4 cores. All right, those are my 4 cores. And I draw. So I'm going first because my opponent's making me go first. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this hand is not as good. It's like, although I do want to see Novas, having 2 Novas in hand, it's kind of a brick, especially if you're going first. Not super good. Granted, you do have Starblast in hand. So just like with the other turn, you could start with a Starblast, draw 2, and just kind of mill through your deck a little bit. But that would be kind of risky because if you draw into, like, let's say 2 more Novas and another one of this guy, or let's say you draw into, like, I don't know, Angelic Pressure and then Nova, it can be kind of difficult. So this hand I would probably honestly mulligan, even though I do have 2 Novas in hand. So if I were to mulligan, I would get 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah, so honestly, the fact that I mulliganed is great. Well, I guess it's not super crazy because I could have drawn these 2, draw that, and then draw this for turn. But yeah, I think the mulligan was correct because I get kind of quicker to cards like these, right? But that's kind of how I'll probably handle that. Granted, if you have a draw in hand, you could probably keep just to try to thin through your deck quicker. But I think that the correct option there was to mulligan, personally. All right, and then I'll show you a player 2 mulligan. I'm not going to go through the start because I feel like you kind of understand the start at this point. So I'm just going to show you what a 1 player 2 mulligan will look like, and then we'll call it there. All right, so let's say at this time we are going player 2. So player 2 is interesting in this game, like I said before, because you start with an additional core. You don't start with an additional core, but you get a core step if you're a player 2, right? So let's say that we go second. We do our mulligan first, but we know we're going second. So we draw 1, 2, 3. Oh my God, this deck was not shuffled very well. As you can tell, 3 charge draws, but we'll play it out. So if I open with 3 charge draw, I'm probably just gonna keep it, honestly. Just try to draw through my deck as fast as possible. So I would probably keep this if I were going, maybe that's a bad idea, but I'll keep this if I were going second. Sure. Yeah, so then my opponent goes, I would go. I'm really just curious what I would draw into. So I draw for my turn. Oh my God, yeah, this was not shuffled enough. We spin to 4 for charge draw. We draw 2 more. Okay, that's not awful. Yeah, so yeah, because I had so much draw and I'm going second, I get an extra core. I probably would have just, like I said, kept this hand. On my second turn, I would probably play another row of depths if I didn't feel super threatened by my opponent. If I did feel super threatened by my opponent, I might have dropped Andromeda instead to either kill one of their smaller units or to stop any kind of momentum they're getting. But yeah, that was a crazy. Let me try one more time. I might have to. I don't feel like doing a hard shuffle on this deck, but I might have to just to make sure that everything's kind of mixed up. All right, here we go. So player 2. So we draw 4. So this is honestly, I think, a great player 2 hand. Once again, because we have the Halberd Dragon Arc, right? So if we have Halberd Dragon Arc in hand, I think he's always a keep if you're going second, because if you go second, not only do you get the additional core, but you get first attack as well. So because you get first attack, you can play him down, you can attack with him, and if your opponent only has small things on the board, they won't be able to swing back on their next turn without investing more cores into those smaller units, or smaller spirits, I should say. And even if you don't want to attack with him, just playing him down forces your opponent to invest cores into spirits if they want to attack you next turn, right? So I'd probably keep this hand. If I keep, I draw into Andromedios, another great card to have early on. So this hand is pretty solid, honestly. You could, if you know your opponent's deck is super wind summoned heavy, you could drop down a Starblast draw. Then you can spend 3 cores to play Halberd and then put 2 cores on them. That's an option. Alternatively, you can spend 4 cores and 1 to play Andromedios. That way, next turn, you can play Halberd Dragon Arc for 1. And then you can put additional core into Andromedios to attack and to start top checking. So yeah, this would be a super solid hand. Basically, the only like really brick hands you can get in this deck, like that are super bad, is if you open with a bunch of Novas, or if you open with only high-end Star Dragons. Like if you get if you get like Andromeda, Nova, Dragon Arc, and then like the other Siegwurm as an opening hand, that's awful, right? You always want a mulligan if you don't have any draw at all, I feel like. As long as you have some kind of draw, or even if you have Andromedios to top check to try to tutor through your Star Dragons, I think both of those are going to be fine in most cases. But you almost always want to have a Big Bang Energy in hand. So if you ever open with a Big Bang Energy, and I feel like at least 1 draw card is always worth keeping in most cases. All right, everybody, and that is going to be it for this deck tech. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, Nova is super cool. I didn't really get a chance to go over matchups too much in this video just because I've only played a limited number of people, right? I've played White Control, I've played Purple Curse, I've played against Pterosaur, and I've played against some yellow, but I have not played against enough variety to really feel comfortable giving you my thoughts on matchups yet. Maybe if I get a couple of extra reps in and I go to a couple locals, I can give you better thoughts on that later down the line. Anyway, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this tech. And what do you guys think about Nova? Are you playing it? Are you playing a different deck? I'm really excited to see what happens in the Grand Open this weekend in Palm Springs. I'm really hoping that either a Nova or a Michaela list makes top 8 or top cut. I love both of those decks very much. And my next deck tech is actually going to be on Michaela, because I think Michaela Luster is a very strong deck, and I'm really looking forward to, if not me, somebody else really cracking the code and showing off what that deck has to offer, right? So I think Michaela Luster is also very strong. I think Michaela is a crazy, borderline broken card, but we'll talk about that in the next video. So if you're interested in seeing that, please subscribe to this channel, and you know, that's all I got for you. See you guys later. I'm gonna try to get some more gameplay out for you guys this week. Not this week, but next week as well. It's been a busy week at work for me, and I'm recording this video and editing it very late into the night to get it out for you guys tomorrow or today, whenever you guys see it, basically. So anyway, without further ado, I'm gonna stop rambling now. Thank you guys so much for watching the content. I really do appreciate the support. And peace. I'll see you guys in the next video.